Hi, I'm Lisa Saunders, and welcome to our show, Doers and Dreamers, or Dreamers and Doers. And I have a very special guest. I'm very excited to have a beer distributor on today. I don't drink beer, and I thought, what am I going to talk about with this man? But I found out from doing a Google search on him that he writes about the history of beer as well as distributing it. So please welcome Patrick Bailey.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Well, I was so excited when I walked into the studio and saw that you were wearing a cap that makes me think of Irish, that makes me think of beer. So now you said you are part Irish, right?
I am a part Irish, yeah. So
okay.
I guess I'm a mutt.
All right.
You know,
what
of
else
everything European, Swedish, English, Scottish, Irish, Italian, and Portuguese. So
right.
A little bit of everything has inspired this.
So the only thing that really protects you from the sun is the Portuguese and Italian,
Yeah,
right? But
and this hat.
Yeah, I think otherwise you must wear sunblock, right? You're pretty fair.
Yeah, I'm a 50 SPF kind of guy, you know.
Me too. I've learned the hard way.
It does, you know, the sun is obviously damaging to my skin, and, you know, a history of skin cancer in my family, so I try to, you know, sunblock up.
Well, I'm from old school where there are a bunch of Irish in the family, but they were Methodist, the kind that didn't believe in drinking. So I didn't grow up with this culture of beer necessarily. Not that there wasn't alcohol in the family. I'm just saying I don't know anything about beer except that I learned that the Mayflower, when they came over on the Mayflower, that was a hot commodity. Children drank beer. And that's the first time I started thinking, wow, beer actually has an interesting history. And I read your article only briefly. What was that article I found out? Do you remember?
I don't. No,
you've written a couple.
I've written a couple.
Well, I was shocked that you mentioned that even Caesar wrote about beer. So can you just start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact quote, but you know, so the Romans were known for wine, but as they moved north, you know, in the region that the Romans, you know, obviously were from Rome, they're very popular with wine. You know, grapes were the natural resource for food, fermentable sugars out there that they could ferment and make wine into. But as they went north, you know, alcoholic beverages are very crop-centric. It's what you grow in your region is basically, that's a fermentable starch sugar choice, is what you're going to use, you know, because back then you couldn't travel up on an 18-wheeler to get your grapes up to England. So as Rome conquered, you know, started going through the German tribes, started conquering them and going up north, these people were brewing beer. You know, they were making beer because their fermentable sugar source was like barley, you know, wheat and barley that they used to make an alcoholic beverage out of.
Okay, so what is the first known reference to beer?
You got to go back to ancient Babylonia, 5,000, 6,000 years ago. The ancient Sumerians have the first written evidence of beer. But so for, you know, go back to the Ice Age, people started on the Ice Age, then they started hunting and gathering, and then by accident, they had these, you know, the seeds from the wild grass they may have harvested and threw them out and whatever. Well, they started regrowing. So, you know, as they grew, they realized they might be able to stick around a little bit. This stuff is regrowing. The herd's still here. We can still hunt, still eat a little bit. Let's just kind of hang out. So you start harvesting these crops, all right? And, you know, when you store them like anybody else, you throw them in a bucket, and, you know, they kind of buckets all around probably. And then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, this is, you know, ancient Babylonia, if I didn't say it, like Iraq, Iran today.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to get my geography going there. So, and then, you know, these buckets lay around, and then, you know, water gets into them, all that. Well, you know, one of the buckets or a couple of the buckets they realized started bubbling. So they're like, wow, well, what's that? Well, so what we know now is yeast is all around us. Like, even as we sit, it's a wild, you know, bacterial organism that its main duty in life is to eat, reproduce, and die. And so what they eat is sugar. And so
yeast eats the sugar.
Yeast eats the sugar.
Okay.
That's what they eat.
Okay.
So they eat the sugar, and then what they digest it, and then what comes out from their digestion, they get rid of their stuff, comes CO2 and alcohol is formed.
Okay.
So now, after they see this thing bubbling, these ancient Mesopotamians decide to, what are they going to do when it's bubbling up? Well, they decide to drink it. And all of a sudden, if you've never had alcohol before in your life, and they're drinking this elixir that was very sweet. Imagine you just have sugar and water. It's like a sweet oatmeal almost. They drank that, and then it was about 1.52% alcohol at that time. I guess they theorized. I mean, I don't think they had a barometer back then. But, so they started drinking this, and voila, they had alcohol. And so what many historians say is that, because it's kind of a couplefold there, they started drinking this beer, but what they didn't realize was they were drinking carbohydrates, which are your building blocks for your brain. Mm-hmm. So you're getting your proteins out of there. And so people are drinking this. So not only are they sticking around, they have a portable water source, because now the water's kind of safe. There isn't bacteria, and you're also getting, maybe some of the...
Does beer stay safer longer than water? Because the Mayflower, the water gets sour and slimy, they were saying in the bottle. Why doesn't the beer go bad?
Because the alcohol content kills off bacteria.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, like as simple like as, like that alcohol content, whatever that is, kills off like bacteria, Mm-hmm. And so that's now safe. With water, it's just water. There's anything can live in water. I mean, we don't live without water. It's the same as the bacteria, they thrive in it. Now you have alcohol, that's going to kill it. So that's kind of how it does. So those people, and like I said, historians say that because of beer, that was one of the main resources that created society, because it helped them develop their brain. That stuff helps your brain, proteins, and it made them live longer, because now they don't have bacteria. Yeah.
Oh, because they don't have it.
They don't have bacteria. They're living a little bit longer. Things are a little bit better. So they started developing mathematics, physics.
Because of beer?
I'm sure there's other things, but that was one of everything has to start somewhere, and there is.
Well, I take it they didn't drink so much that they were inebriated.
No.
I'm
sure.
I was reading it, like I said, in the Mayflower, they didn't want to share it with the Pilgrims, because you were letting me know the Mayflower is basically a bus, and they have to be able to get back on the Mayflower.
Yeah, so what the Mayflower was a rented out ship. Mm-hmm. It was, they paid their way to get to America, and they paid it, but the Mayflower had to get back. When you're on a ship, you're sitting there, everybody's in this tight location, like anywhere else. You're coughing, you're sneezing, you're whatever else is out there. They probably caught a fish that now has a disease, and so that worm is getting in there. If you're just having plain water, so that bacteria is just attacking that water, just sitting stagnant. But if you have the beer, that alcohol kills off those organisms. And and by then, also, like, they were boiling the beer too. They knew about that. Yeah, like, you got to boil it, which is a long story in the whole brewing process. But
you do have to boil.
Yeah,
beer
right nowadays,
you
you boil beer, but I mean, like most times people heat up and it's a roll and boil and stuff like that for a certain amount of time. It's like a whole magical recipe for every beer. But so yeah, that beer, you had to have beer to get over to the United States, but you also had to have enough to get back. So, and then, one of the things, I don't know the exact quote, I think you had it there, we must make land because we are out of our victuals, especially our beer. Mm-hmm. And beer was, you have to think of it back then, there's always been that bad thing about beer where it's, bikini babes and just jokes and good times, but beer was essential for you back then. Right. I mean, these beers that they were drinking, they're not like imperial stouts. They were maybe 2%, 3% alcohol,
Oh, okay, so the alcohol content was less.
There was definitely, for a regular beer that they're bringing over, sure.
Okay.
But, like that was probably for the kids, but I'm sure they had a batch or two of strong beer, which they brewed back then, which was basically just exactly what it is, throwing a bunch of ingredients in it.
Okay, so what was interested when I saw, I don't know if it was on the History Channel or whatever it was, talking about the Little Ice Age.
Yeah.
How there was a period in history where it was very, very cold, and
Yeah.
that's how the Frankenstein author, she was, I guess they were, had nothing to do. A bunch of writers were sitting around one summer when it never was winter.
I was reading up on that. I don't know if it was like the Indonesian volcano or something.
Yeah, volcano.
Some volcano.
Yeah.
Well, so there's like kind of two aspects that I was looking into with that Little Ice Age. One thing was the sun had less sunspots on it, they noticed, and that, I guess, I'm not a sun expert, but they say that when there's lack of sunspots means there's lack of sun activity, so it may have been, I think they said the average temperature was a degree Celsius less. So, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you encompass the whole world. So, like you were saying, that was around 1300. So there was a lot of wineries back in the 1300s. They were using grapes, they're fermentable sugar.
Okay.
Especially, and they're saying 1300, but in 1300 Rome ruled. That was the Vatican. Everything was ruled by Rome. The Holy Roman Empire, and so everything was centered around wine. But with that Little Ice Age, you killed all your wine crops because they can't grow in cold.
Okay.
So, like I said before, there wasn't 18-wheelers back then to ship your crops across country. So they had to improvise and grow different crops that would survive that weather. One of them were barley, corn, rice, things that were suitable for that. And those are things that you can use to brew beer. So now you were asking, how did that impact America?
Right. As far as being
you have to think what was
beer
going on
drinking
at that time. Right in the smack dab middle of it, you had 1492 when Columbus sailed over. So now that's what they were using for their beverages choice. Now they're spreading it over even more so. Now you're going around and you're right in the middle of the 1800s, and that's when expansion started happening and people had beer, right? So wine was still around. You sort of started finding wine. But then this was the kicker. You went over and found the Native Americans at the time. They were brewing beer, but it was made with maize or corn.
Were they brewing beer before people came over from Europe?
So as the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians were brewing beer 4,000, 5,000 years ago, they were brewing with their fermentable sugar source. So weren't the the Incans, the Mayans, the Aztecs. They were brewing with the same they were brewing a type of the same thing, but with just a different fermentable sugar, which was corn at the time.
Okay, so
interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, so how did beer fare during Prohibition? Because whenever I watch movies on Prohibition, it's always bathtub gin. They're always talking about gin or rum and things like that. So explain to me.
Prohibition set the beer world back. Automatically, what was it, 26 years, I think Prohibition was, right? Something like that.
No, I don't think it wasn't that long.
Okay, however many years it was, I forget. I know it started in 1919. I think it ended in 1933. So I guess whatever that math is.
I don't know the years, but anyway, what did that do?
So you have to think about, so you had a society where, and we were talking briefly before, beer wasn't able to be brewed. Beer was brewed. Obviously bootleggers brewed it, but if you were a bootlegger and you had to sell to 1,000 people and you wanted to maximize your profits, are you going to try to brew a beer that won't get you as drunk? You're getting your bang for your buck as if you were going to brew gin, scotch, whiskey, where you can have that same vat and have your
make a lot more.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was, not to say there was definitely beer out there, and I think there's some stories of some certain.
Was there?
Yeah.
Was there a thing where there was a raid on beer, at least in the movies?
Well, yeah. So some of the breweries used to sell you the ingredients for beer with directions on the back on how to brew that beer.
Oh, okay.
And they'd tell you like the malts and stuff like that and how to do it. So now imagine this. You had a whole generation. Imagine if, I've been out of high school, I was 21, I was born in 79. So basically, if it was 13 years, if I'm doing my math right, which that's from when I was 21 to 34. You just drank whiskey, or you just drank gin. Are you gonna go and try beer? No, you're gonna stick with what you know. And so that basically demolished an entire generation of beer drinkers.
Okay.
And then so before Prohibition, there were 4,000 brewers in the United States. After, I think there was half, and then 10 years after that, even less went on. And then, kind of the whole big brewer craze went with Schaefer, Schlitz, Budweiser, Coors, Miller.
Now, would you know how to brew it yourself?
Yes.
Oh, have you ever done it?
A couple times.
Okay. What do you need special? I mean, I always see in a brewery big silver-looking tanks. I mean, can you do it in your backyard?
You could do it. You ever see one of those like Poland Spring things? Basically about that size, a nice 5-gallon thing. I mean, you're not brewing for 10,000 people. You're brewing for probably you and your friends.
Right.
So a 5-gallon jug will do.
So it can be done in your house?
Yeah, you get you can do it on a stock pot and a 5-gallon jug, and then there's some, there's fermenter, the airlocks.
Oh, really?
And then you could just buy ingredients. You can get the yeast. There's a couple brewer stores out and about in this area.
That you could just buy that
stuff
and see about making it?
Correct. They sell you the ingredients. They'll sell you the hops, the malts, and they'll sell you 1,000 different malts.
So if our water supply ever gets polluted, we should all be making our own beer?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, can you make beer with polluted? I mean, don't you need water to make
you want
beer?
it? All right. So yeah. So this is the thing. There's water source is very key to. I mean, especially if you go back to the Little Ice Age, and again, there wasn't. So it started out. You needed to build a brewery where there was a water source.
Okay, so you do need water, but does it have to be clean? Like
this is the thing. There's like 2 different types of water, from like hard or soft.
Okay.
A hard water, you need to have strong ingredients, or you're going to start picking up the mineral contents in the flavor of beer. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't interact good. And then there's, for like the more delicate beers, like a Pilsner, you need a soft water. So flip the script with that. Like Burton-upon-Trent is known for the hardest water out there. It has, I don't know what the exact minerals are in there, but it was known for its hard water, and brewers like that. So what came out of Burton-upon-Trent was some of the greatest IPAs to ever come out in the world.
Is that a place you're talking?
Burton-upon-Trent, England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have really good ale because they have hard water?
Their IPAs,
Because don't people always complain if their water is hard? But if you're a beer
maker, if you're just drinking straight up water,
you're complaining. But if you're a beer maker, you're excited.
Sure.
To have hard water.
They love it. The Burton-upon-Trent waters is cherished by many brewers. And the softest waters were in Pils, Czechoslovakia, and Pils in Czechoslovakia. That's where Pilsner or Kel came from. And that's like a...
Do you do beer tasting? Like,
I do beer tastings, beer dinners,
like,
beer classes.
You sit there, do you? Because you'd be really good. I mean, it must be really fun because you know all these
If my whole job was just this every day, it would be wonderful. But, I am in sales, so, there's always a lot of competition out there for beer,
Well, tell me about the Mayflower. I thought this was pretty exciting. I asked you to bring Mayflower just because I'm interested in Mayflower. I'm interested about the beer.
So this was started by Drew Brousseau, and I could be slaughtering his name, but I think that's how we pronounce his last name. He is a 10th generation descendant of the Mayflower. His great something grandfather was John Aldine, who was the barrel cooper of the Mayflower. Now the barrels were obviously kept with beer.
Okay.
And this brewery, Mayflower, is located in Plymouth, Mass.
Really? How long has the company been in business?
2007 it started.
It started, so he's kind of using his ancestry link to,
that was one of the things he, I think he was in investments or financial field before he got into this, and I guess sort of like Jim Cook from Sam Adams, he wanted to try something different, and so his respected his family history like everybody else does, and liked the story, and just kind of, hey, let's try it. Let's go brew some beer and try to sell it. So what they're known for is they brew styles of beer that were out in England at the time of the Mayflower.
That's great.
You know, like styles that were in England, yeah.
And
like
how do they know what styles? Like, what makes one beer taste different? You already taught me about the water.
Yep.
So how would he know what
So
styles
what
are
makes a beer different, like what a beer style is judged on, is the type of malts they use. Like there's, you know, like a base malt would be like just a pale color. You know, if you ever see wild grass, like kind of that color. So then what they do is they roast those malts, and as you roast them longer, that Maillard effect, same thing as beef, it starts to burn, darken. It goes into like a brown caramel, then burnt color, and each malt that comes out provides a different taste and aroma characteristic on your palate. So as these styles progressed, you know, like, you know, styles of beer came from anything, naming like a porter got named after the street porters of England that seemed to like this beer. Before that, it was called Entire, made up of 3 beers, but somehow because they drink it, all the porter's beer. You know, so it's really weird. It's like as simple and as weird as can be, and how they came up with a name.
Recipes, or you know, for what was around at that time.
You know, really, Google is a magical source. The internet is probably, for me. I mean, my mother always told me I asked too many questions, which I guess ended up being a good thing. The internet is a magical source for almost anything. Yeah, I'm sure, as you know. I mean, you read your books.
So you can find out what kind of beers were and what recipe. How would you even get the recipes?
There's definitely recipes. Books? I mean, you could. There's like homebrew.com, I think it is, or something. They could. There's recipes that like simulate different beers. There's recipes just like for beef stew or anything. Okay. There's a million different recipes on the same thing on how to cook a pasta as how to brew a porter with that little bit different ingredient in it that makes theirs that much better. You know, like your mom added salt, well, my mom adds pepper. Is it still beef stew? Sure, but it's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It's really great, yeah.
So you learn everything about people's beer, and then you go around to different restaurants?
Restaurants, package stores, bars.
Where do you
public access shows.
Where do you, like, what states do you
we distribute for Middlesex and New London County.
Do you do both those counties?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you drive around to restaurants and say, I have beer, or like how does
you know, well,
work?
the good thing, and I've done both. I mean, I started out with a Harpoon Brewery out of Boston, and you know, back then it was 11, 12 years ago. The craft movement was kind of starting, but not quite there yet. So it was a lot of cold calling. Good thing about F&F is, you know, we're pretty.
That's who you work for.
We've been around,
Distributors.
and we've been around since 1947, and it's went down. It's now owned by Eric Filardi, the owner of my company, and his grandfather started in 1947. So, and we have some pretty strong brands.
You have a name, and then so you might come in and say, oh, I have this new beer, Mayflower. Since you're a restaurant that likes to promote history, are you trying to give people a historic feel? I think this would be a good beer for you. Is that the kind of
Sure, you know, like I guess you always try to find that magical fit to make them buy your product. You know, it's, you know, like your book, you try to gear people and find people's likes and dislikes to kind of match up their beer selection. You know.
Well, no, that's interesting because I always I bought a bottle of mead now at a winery, not because I liked it, but that's in books. You know, I didn't realize Shakespeare or somebody would talk about mead, and it's just kind of fun to have what you've read in history books,
you know, it's
seen in movies.
I write, I write my newsletter, my weekly newsletter.
Oh, you have a weekly newsletter. Yeah. How can people see this weekly? Is it about beer, the history of beer, or what is it about?
I mean, usually I write it for accounts and stuff like that, but you know, if
I mean, is it fun? I mean,
yeah, it's fun. You know, it's just kind of write it for our accounts. You know, I think the Mystic Chamber of Commerce puts it on their website.
Oh, do they? Okay, so people can look there.
Yeah,
and
Trish puts it on their website. Okay. So there's a couple on there now. And it's not for anything else, just educational. And, you know, I like to just get out the story of beer because, I mean, I've just kind of touched on what
Well, yes, in my
There
book,
is.
Mystic Seafarer's Trail, I'm working on a second edition of it, really, and because I wanted to add a few things about shipwrecks, new shipwreck information that I have, but also when I won that beer Stein hoist,
Yeah.
sponsored by Samuel Adams, I
Yes.
just thought that was hysterical.
Yeah. Well, so, we were asking about it, and Sam Adams comes up and we distribute Sam Adams. So, they, because of the 3-tier system that was started after Prohibition, breweries sell to us, we sell to the retailers, and then the retail obviously sells to you. When they implement new promotions like that, and it's kind of on us to kind of execute the plan and go out there and really promote. And that thing about that Stein hoisting competition just really brings back Oktoberfest, and it makes Oktoberfest, because what do you think of Oktoberfest? You think of beer, you think of Steins. And,
Right.
I think one of the competitions they have out there is a World Stein hoisting competition.
Oh,
in
they do
Munich,
have one in
Germany.
Munich?
You didn't get close, so you don't have to
No,
worry
I don't know.
about
I
it.
didn't win.
I didn't either. I think your time beat mine, but so yeah, that's
That was
pretty
just
embarrassing.
fun.
Yeah,
That was just fun. My
It's-
friends, I wasn't going to do it because I don't do things like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not athletic at all, but my friend's like, I'll do it if
but
you do
you know
it.
that's it.
So I did it, and I ended up having so much fun, and I couldn't believe my time because I haven't won anything since a pie eating contest in 4th grade,
And that's what I mean. Our general message, our sales guys, me, is beer is a great story. It's great fun. It's been, if you think about all your holiday parties, it's been around. I've done stories like of winter festivals, and beer has played a part in those winter festivals since the pagan times, and it's really just got a really rich history to it, and it's
Well, I'm excited that
Yeah.
you taught me some new things because I always love to have a story to tell at parties.
plenty. I'll tell you, and I think the world of beer and I came at the perfect moment because I know useless stories, and for however that came into fruition, it works out for my job. So it's
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I'm updating my book just so I can talk about me winning the Samuel Adams
There you
Stein
go.
hoist in
Yeah.
Mystic anyway. No, I did
Yeah.
not win it in Boston, but I had fun.
no, you won it
competing.
at Pizzetta, right?
I won it at
Yeah.
Pizzetta.
Did Gary buy you a free pizza for that?
I got a gift certificate.
Oh, wow.
Plus
Gary-
other prizes and.
Gary putting out the pocket, nice.
So, it was my husband's tired of me telling the story because I tell it over and
Hey,
over.
that's
But,
okay.
he got a discount on his next meal because I won that. It was a lot of fun, and it enabled me to talk about my history because Samuel Adams, the real one, wanted my ancestor, Henry Gale, to hang for his role in Shays' Rebellion. So I was always teasing my husband because ever since we moved to New England, I see Sam Adams beer everywhere.
So does
So-
your great grandfather give a ghostly chill to you every time you drink a Sam Adams?
Well, I don't, like I said, I'm
Or
not
does
a
your
beer
neck
drinker.
does your neck start to
Yeah,
hurt when
yeah.
you
I'm not
drink
actually a
Sam
beer
Adams?
drinker, so it's not really an issue, but I love that I see it around at parties so I can point to it and tell a story. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much
hey.
for coming. That was a lot of
Anytime.
fun, and next time I update my book again, I'd love to interview you on beer because
No
that was
problem.
really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us on Dreamers and Doers.